June 30th, 2023. It is late afternoon in Phoenix, Arizona, and the thermometer has just touched 110 degrees. Nobody in the city looks up. In a place like this, 110 is simply summer. 5 million people go about their evening behind cooled glass, certain that the machines will hold and the season will pass, the way it always has. When you picture the most dangerous place to live in America, you probably picture a coast in the path of a hurricane, or city sitting on a fault, or town at the edge of a burning forest. You do not picture this, a sunny, prosperous desert city that millions of people are choosing to move toward. And that is exactly the point. The most dangerous place in the country has no warning sirens and no evacuation routes because its killer never arrives from somewhere else. It is already here and it is invisible. Over the next 31 days, the temperature in Phoenix will not fall below 110 degrees a single time. The nights will not cool. The pavement will reach 180 degrees, hot enough to burn skin on contact. By the time the summer ends, more than 600 people in this one county will be dead of the heat, the deadliest year any American county has ever recorded. And this record summer, the one that broke the city, is the one scientists say will look ordinary by 2050. The people here trusted the machines and the season the way they always had. This is the story of how the sunniest, fastest growing city in America is quietly becoming the most dangerous place to live in the country. To understand why a booming American city is on course to become the most dangerous place to live in the country, you have to go back to a simple fact. Phoenix, Arizona was never meant to hold 5 million people. It sits in the low desert of the Salt River Valley, in a basin ringed by bare mountains, where the summer sun stands almost directly overhead, and the afternoons press down like a hand. For most of human history, only a small number of people lived here, and they survived the summers by sleeping outdoors and staying close to water. The modern city is a 20th century invention, and it was made possible by two machines, the air conditioner and the canal. When home air conditioning became common in the 1950s, the desert around Phoenix stopped being a place you endured and became a place you could sell. The city grew, and then it kept growing, faster than almost anywhere else in the United States. Today, the metropolitan area holds close to 5 million people, spread across hundreds of square miles of subdivisions, parking lots, and freeways. Maricopa County, which contains it, has for years added more residents than almost any other county in the nation. That growth is the first half of the story. The second half is that the very thing drawing people here, the warm, dry, sunny desert, is turning into something that can kill them. And unlike a hurricane on a coast or a fault beneath a city, the danger in Phoenix does not announce itself. It has no season and no name. It is simply the heat, and every year it climbs a little higher. In Phoenix, air conditioning is not a luxury. It is life support. When the power holds, the danger stays outside the walls. When it fails, a broken unit, an unpaid bill, an aging apartment complex, a grid pushed to its limit on the hottest afternoon of the year. The indoors can climb past 115 degrees within a few hours. Almost every heat death in the city traces back, in some way, to a moment when the cooling stopped. The city has also been warming itself. Phoenix is one of the fastest warming major cities in the country, and much of that warming is self-inflicted. Asphalt, concrete, and dark rooftops soak up sunlight all day and release it slowly through the night, so the city's overnight lows have risen even faster than its afternoon highs. That nighttime heat is the real killer. Without a cool night, the human body never gets its recovery window, and heat stress builds day after day until something inside gives way. For decades, none of this seemed to matter because the machines always worked and the summers, however brutal, always ended. That assumption, that the power will hold and the summer will break, is the quiet gamble underneath a city of 5 million people. In 2023, the desert called the Bet. Phoenix sits in a bowl. The Salt River Valley is a low basin, a little over 1,000 feet in elevation, rimmed by mountains that trap a warm air and hold it in place. Across that bowl, the city has laid down an enormous surface of pavement and rooftops, and that surface behaves like a battery, charging with heat all day, discharging it all night. The result is a place that not only gets hot, but stays hot long after the sun goes down. Then there's the water. Phoenix is a desert city that uses water on the scale of a rainforest population, and it draws that water from two shrinking sources: groundwater pumped from beneath the ground, and the Colorado River, carried clear across the state through a giant canal. The Colorado has been locked in a more than 20-year drought. Its great reservoirs have fallen toward record lows, and in 2021, the federal government declared the river's first ever official shortage, forcing water cuts in which Arizona has absorbed the largest share of any state. This is the trap at the center of the city. The same warming that drives the heat is draining the water, so a hotter Phoenix will need more water at the exact moment it has less. Two hazards, one place, both getting worse on the same clock. The story of 2023 is really the story of a long climb that made it possible. Around the year 1990, a typical Phoenix summer brought roughly 7 days with a high of 110 degrees or more. That was the baseline the city was built around. A week of the truly dangerous stuff, and then relief. Over the following decades, that number crept upward as the region warmed and the pavement spread. By 2020, Phoenix logged a then-record 53 days at or above 110 degrees. The extreme was becoming ordinary. Each year, the calendar of dangerous days grew a little longer, the nights stayed a little warmer, and the margin between a normal summer and a deadly one grew a little thinner. Nobody living through it could feel the trend from one summer to the next. That is the nature of this kind of danger. It arrives not as a blow, but as a drift, a few extra degrees and a few extra days at a time. And then came a summer that made the drift impossible to ignore. On June 30th, 2023, the temperature in Phoenix reached 110 degrees. The next day, it did it again, and the next. For 31 days in a row, the high never dropped below 110, shattering the old record of 18 straight such days, set back in 1974. For a month, the city does not cool down. The overnight lows hang in the 90s. The desert basin holds the day's heat like a lid, and the pavement radiates it back through the dark. There is no recovery window, no cool hour before dawn. Across the full year, Phoenix will hit 110 degrees on 54 separate days, and July of 2023 will become, by average temperature, the hottest month ever recorded in any city in the United States. On the street, daily life bends around the danger. By late morning, the sidewalks empty out. Misters hiss over restaurant patios where no one sits. The hum of tens of thousands of air conditioners becomes the sound of the city, every one of them pulling at once on a grid that has to carry its heaviest load on the exact afternoons when a failure would be deadliest. For most people, with a working unit and a cool room to retreat to, the month is merely miserable. For the people without that refuge, it is the most dangerous stretch of their lives. Inside that month, the ordinary machinery of the city begins to fail. Emergency rooms fill with heat stroke, and at some Phoenix hospitals, the surge of patients climbs to levels not seen since the worst of the pandemic. The county medical examiner starts to fall behind as bodies arrive faster than they can be counted. Something that had always been survivable is quietly crossing a line, and the people crossing it first are the ones with the least protection from the sun. In a Phoenix heat wave, the ground itself becomes a weapon. Under the direct summer sun, the surface temperature of asphalt and concrete can climb as high as 180 degrees, hot enough to cause a second-degree burn in a fraction of a second, and a third-degree burn after a minute or more of contact. A sidewalk, a parking lot, a metal seatbelt, a patch of bare dirt, all of them can sear skin on touch. The Arizona Burn Center at Valleywise Health, one of the busiest burn units in the country, fills with the kind of patient a burn unit was never built for. These are not victims of fire. They are people burned by the ground. In 2023, the center admits 136 patients with heat-related burns, up from 85 the year before, and 14 of them die of their injuries. Many had simply fallen and could not get up in time. The elderly who collapsed, the unsheltered who had nowhere cooler to lie, people who lost consciousness on a surface as hot as a cooking pan and could not save themselves. The average patient that summer is 56 years old. At least 21 of them have no home at all. A third require intensive care, and the average hospital stay runs nearly 2 weeks. The doctors who run the unit describe a grim new pattern. A rising share of their patients are people who lost consciousness on the pavement and could not get back up. Some overcome by the heat, some by drugs, all of them left against a surface hot enough to fry an egg. A person who faints on a Phoenix sidewalk in July does not simply wait for help. They begin to burn where they lie. The burns are the most visible wound of the heat, but they are only a small part of what the summer is doing to the people of this city. The dead of 2023 were not a statistic. They were people, and their stories show exactly how this kind of heat kills. Steve Krause was an Army veteran who lived at the Desertscape Mobile Home Park on Dunlap Avenue. His air conditioner had been broken since May. He had been working with the city to get it fixed, and a nonprofit had even been brought in to install a temporary unit while the repairs were arranged. But the help did not arrive in time. When he was found in July, the medical examiner determined it had been upward of 115 degrees inside his home. In Phoenix, a broken machine can be a death sentence, and Steve Krause is the proof. Frank Paterniti was 66 years old and had lived at the Elton apartment homes for about 5 years. He died that July. According to the medical examiner, an underlying cardiac condition caused his accidental death, but the record also notes that other illnesses and the heat played a part in it. His case shows the quieter way heat takes people, not always with a single dramatic blow, but by pushing an already failing body over the edge, so that it is written down as a cardiac death that the heat helped along. Then there are the people whose names never reached the news, the ones the burn center counted this summer. They were found on sidewalks and alleys, in empty lots, some of them unsheltered, most of them alone. They had fallen on ground as hot as a stovetop and could not get themselves off it, and by the time anyone reached them, the damage was already done. 14 of them did not survive. They are the clearest picture of who this heat comes for. Not the people in cooled offices and cooled cars, but the people already living closest to the edge. And then there is Stephanie Pullman. She was 72 years old, living just outside Phoenix, and on a day when the temperature topped 107 degrees, her electric company shut off her power over a past due balance of about $51. Without air conditioning, she died in the heat. Her death, confirmed through utility and regulatory records, became a turning point. State regulators later barred power companies from cutting off residential electricity during the hottest months. $51 in a Phoenix summer was the distance between a woman's life and her death. When Maricopa County finished counting the dead of 2023, the number was 645. It was the most heat-related deaths any American county had ever recorded in a single year, a 52% jump over the previous record of 425, set just the summer before. It was also the 8th year in a row that the county had set a new record for heat deaths. The curve was not just rising, it was bending upward. To put that number in perspective, Maricopa County lost more people to heat in that one summer than some entire states lose to every kind of weather in a decade. It held less than a sixth of the population of Texas, and yet it recorded more than twice as many heat deaths. The medical examiner's office had to add capacity just to keep pace with the arrivals. This was not a distant catastrophe in some poor corner of the world. It was happening in one of the wealthiest countries on earth, in a modern American city in plain sight. The dead were not spread evenly across the city. About 3/4 of them died outdoors. Nearly half were people experiencing homelessness, with no walls and no machine to hide behind. About 2 out of every 3 were 50 or older, and more than 3 out of 4 were men. Heat is often called a great equalizer, but in Phoenix it is not. It searches out the old, the poor, the sick, and the alone, and it finds them first. This is what makes heat such a strange kind of disaster. There is no wreckage, no flattened neighborhood, no dramatic before and after. The city looks exactly the same on the 1st of August as it did on the 1st of June. The catastrophe is invisible, spread out one apartment and one sidewalk at a time, which is part of why, even as the toll climbs, the people keep coming. Here's the part that turns a bad summer into a warning. The summer of 2023, the one that overwhelmed the hospitals and broke every record, is not the ceiling. By the middle of this century, projections say it may look ordinary. Analyses built on climate model data, the same modeling behind the risk maps published by ProPublica and the New York Times Magazine, project that by around 2050, an average Phoenix year could bring roughly 47 days over 110 degrees. Around 1990, that number was about 7. The models also project roughly 132 days a year over 100 degrees, and under a high emissions path, parts of Arizona spending about half the year above 95 degrees. The sharpest number is the one about death. The United Nations Development Program, using that same climate model data, projects that by the end of the century, climate change could add on the order of 79 extra heat deaths for every 100,000 people in the Phoenix area under a moderate path, and closer to 148 per 100,000 under a high emissions path. For scale, the rate at which Americans die in car crashes today is only around 12 to 15 per 100,000. In the worst case, mid-century Phoenix would lose people to the heat at several times the rate it loses them to the road. And the heat is only half of it. The Colorado River that keeps the city alive is shrinking even as the city grows, and the water cuts already underway are, by the accounts of the people who manage the river, only the beginning. A hotter city needs more water to survive at the very moment the river that feeds it is giving less. Add a power grid that must carry more air conditioning on hotter afternoons than it was ever built for, and 3 pressures, heat, water, and electricity, begin tightening on the same 5 million people at once. You would expect a place like this to be emptying out. It is doing the opposite. Phoenix and its desert county remain among the fastest growing places in the United States, and independent risk studies rank 6 Arizona counties, Maricopa among them, in the 100 most climate endangered in the country. People are not fleeing the danger, they are moving straight into it. Some of the fastest growing towns in the entire country sit on the desert edge of this metro, where new rooftops now cover ground that was open desert only a few years ago. Every new subdivision is more pavement to store the heat, more demand on the grid, and more families living in the path of a summer that keeps getting longer. Part of the answer is money. Surveys by the real estate firm Redfin find that most American buyers say climate change affects where they choose to live. And yet, the actual flow of people is into the hot, dry, growing metros of the Sun Belt, because that is where the jobs are and where a family can still afford a home. The safest places, the cool and temperate ones, have become the expensive ones. But part of the answer is buried in how our minds work. The climate adaptation researcher Jesse Keenan has put it plainly. Human beings are built to run from a bus bearing down on us or a predator in the open, but we are poorly wired to feel what he calls slow violence, a danger that arrives gradually, 1 degree in one summer at a time. A flood or a fire trips the alarm in our brains. A rising baseline does not. That is why a man can flee wildfire smoke in Oregon, move toward Florida for relief, and find himself nearly swept away in a flash flood on a Miami street, running from one hazard straight into another because almost nowhere is truly safe. And the danger he is moving toward never feels as urgent as the one he is leaving. There is, at least, one hopeful sign. Redfin found that buyers shown a home's flood risk went on to bid on safer properties. When the slow danger is finally made visible, people do respond. So is Phoenix doomed? No. And that is the honest end of this story. The city is not standing still. It appointed one of the country's first public heat officers. It has expanded cooling centers, begun coating streets with reflective pavement and roofs with reflective paint, and started planting shade over the hottest neighborhoods. After deaths like Stephanie Pullman's, it made it illegal to shut off a family's power in the middle of summer. None of that stops the heat, but all of it decides how many people the heat gets to kill. Other desert cities are watching Phoenix closely because whatever it learns about surviving a hotter world, they will soon need to learn as well. It has become, without ever choosing to, the place where the country finds out whether a modern city can adapt to heat faster than the heat can rise. That is the real message on the sign. How dangerous Phoenix becomes by 2050 is not written yet. It depends on how much the world keeps warming, on how hard the city works to adapt, and on whether people keep pouring into the path of a hazard that is only intensifying. The most dangerous place in America may turn out not to be a coast or a fault line, but a sunny, affordable, fast-growing desert city that looks, on a spring afternoon, like exactly the place you would want to move. The heat there is patient, and it is not finished rising. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. These documentaries take real time to research and put together, and if this one held your attention, the best thing you can do is like it, leave a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.